up, guys? Beyond the Party, episode 5. Happy to be back. We had some computer issues the past few weeks, but everything's fixed now, and we're going to be implementing a lot of new things in the podcast, and we're just excited to keep going. This week, we have Manny Ferreiros on. Welcome to the show, Manny.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
How you doing? How was your weekend?
Fantastic. I see you guys are ready to drink, so the day can only get better.
This is true.
Exactly. Alcohol, it always helps a little bit.
Only a little bit though.
KP, how was your weekend?
It was
This past
good.
weekend?
It was good. Friday we had DJ Smooth. It's Mother's Day weekend. It was kind of slow start, but Saturday we had Spin King during the day. It was a pretty good turnout, and Saturday was also kind of rainy, so it brought in a good crowd. And then Saturday night we had Brody Jenner, which was pretty cool. It's Kylie Jenner's brother, if you're wondering.
I know.
But it was cool. It was good music. Saturday was definitely a bit busier crowd, more bottle service, but it was fun.
Yeah,
What'd you do this
that's
weekend?
awesome.
How was your weekend, Nikos?
It was great. I had JD McGillicuddy's on Friday up at St. Joe's,
Okay.
which was really fun because the college year is ending, so all the kids are
Out and
trying
about,
to get
trying
out.
to get their last party in.
Yeah, before they move back home. So that was really fun. Then Saturday we did a full bloom music festival at Pace and Blossom, which was a huge success. It was awesome. The place was packed. We played like all EDM music, and it was like a little festival of our own. So that was really cool. I got to play for an hour. And it was fun. And then yesterday I just spent the day with my family for Mother's Day.
Right, me too.
And
me too.
Now we're here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great weekend. How was your weekend, Manny?
You said EDM music. What's that?
Electronic dance music.
I gotta look that up to get familiar with it. So yeah, Mother's Day weekend is typically through the years. It's challenging.
Yeah.
People make plans. Obviously, it's all based on family and whatnot. So. It's typically a challenging weekend for anybody in the business. Friday we had Rick Wonder, and it started off really like, oh boy, what's gonna happen? And then it just out of nowhere, it just popped,
Really?
which was great. And Rick is fantastic. He's one of my favorite, not just one of my favorite DJs, but the guy. He's always happy. He's always happy. That guy and. When he plays, he has his own party. He's just dancing in the booth, and just the way he plays and what he plays.
Yeah, definitely.
It's very, it's one of those things that energy definitely goes out onto the floor, and then you have a great party. So Friday was a big surprise because we thought it was going to be soft, and then Saturday we had Morton. For those, I'm sure you know who Morton is.
Yeah.
He's David Guetta's partner. They basically started this future rave sound that started and then kind of got off to a slow start, and now it's just massive. So he's one of our residents. He plays multiple times a year for us, and he was supposed to arrive around 10:30 from Orlando, and he sent me a video. Basically, he's sitting on the plane, and you hear the overhead thing that they're going back to the gate. There's some sort of problem. So.
Oh God.
Wow.
So yeah, the wonderful life of nightclubbing.
Yeah.
You'll love it. It's nightlife. You'll love it. It's great. It'll be great. So but he ended up arriving. He arrived late. And typically headliners go on at 1 a.m. And he literally arrived to ACY at quarter to 1.
Oh wow.
But my friend Neo, who was the opening DJ, he held the room down, and it was just, again, it just turned out to be. We were gonna go with only one floor because it looked like it was gonna be slow, and then again out of nowhere, like, we got to open up both floors, and then we ended up having an incredibly busy night. So sometimes things just work out.
Yeah.
Great weekend though.
Tell me a little about like your early life. I know Frank mentioned me. You're from Spain, and then you moved to the U.S.
Yeah. So I was born in Paris. My mom and dad were living in Paris, and I came along unexpectedly. That's the story that I was told. So
me too.
So so I think within a year, my mom and dad ended up moving back to Spain. So I grew up there and then at one point they migrated to the U.S. And I think 5 years after they came to the U.S., they brought my sister and I. and my older brother came with them initially. So I actually came to the U.S. I turned 12 the day I got
Okay.
to the U.S. So it's very different, obviously. And they were living in Boston, so I was in Boston for a long time, and then ended up moving down to the South Jersey area
Right.
in 2004.
When did you start getting into like nightlife, DJing, all that?
So I was always a fan of music. My dad had always wanted to be a musician. Never had the opportunity to. So I think that he always wanted one of his kids to eventually, become a musician. So I think it was within like 3 months of me being in the U.S., he bought me a saxophone,
Oh wow.
and I started, fooling around with it. He got me classes, and I remember taking classes. I didn't speak English at the time, so
Right,
I
I
had
was
this
gonna ask
teacher.
that.
And I swear to you, I think I did jingle bells on the saxophone for 9 months. And I was so disgusted
Yeah.
that I just didn't even want to see the saxophone. But what I learned was that I could listen to a song and I could figure out how to play it back. I couldn't read music, but if I liked a melody, or if I, had the radio on and I would listen to a song, I would pick up the saxophone and I don't know how I did it, but I would figure it out. Like, okay, that sounds good, or that doesn't sound good, and get it to where I could play the song just by ear. Then eventually, I had an interest in playing the drums, bought a used drum set it up in the basement, and drove my parents nuts. And then I went to a teen dance. It was like a high school dance. And, there was a hall and there was music. And I had never seen a DJ in my life. So there was a DJ that was playing music. So I wanted to see where the music was coming from. So I came upon where the DJ was set up, and I saw the turntables, and I was like, wow. I looked at them as an instrument.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, I have to do that. So I went out, I bought a pair of Newmark turntables and a Radio Shack mixer. And
Radio Shack.
yeah, and I just started to buy vinyl, and did a similar thing, just set up in the basement. And I had no idea what beat mixing was. I just knew that it was blending two records together, but I didn't know music theory. I didn't know how music was structured. So I basically spent about a year doing it wrong.
Right.
Until I got a cassette tape from a DJ that I started to go see on the weekends. It was a Sunday party, and it was 16 plus.
Okay.
So I could get in there.
What?
Yeah, it was 16 plus.
That-
Yeah.
It's not a thing anymore.
Yeah,
That's
no,
insane.
no. So he gave me a tape, and I remember going to a record store, and I gave the owner of the record store the tape, and I said, I want every record on this cassette. I spent $136. It was all freestyle records.
Okay.
Frank knows what freestyle is. And that's it. And then
Stevie B.
Yeah, exactly.
I know
And
freestyle.
So what happened was that on that tape, the way the DJ was mixing, I could tell by my ear when he was mixing. So that's when it clicked for me. Because when I was mixing, I was just trying to use the pitch control to get the records to be at the same tempo, but I wasn't sure when to mix. And obviously, if you don't know, it's like kind of sneakers in the dryer, right? You got melodies over each other and all that stuff. So listening to that tape, that's where I said, okay, this is how it's done. And from there, I just started to really practice. And when I felt comfortable enough, I went to the smallest bar I could find in Boston, and I went in and I said, hey, I'm a new DJ. I'm just starting out.
How old were you?
Oh, man. I was probably, at that point, I was probably 19.
Okay.
I was probably 19 years old. And, he gave me a Thursday. He gave me a Thursday night, and it was a college night. So it was just, I could play, whatever I wanted. And funny enough, it's an interesting story, and I know it's I could go on forever about stories, but this man started a company that was called Megamix. It is now known as X-Mix.
Okay.
So the owner of the company was managing that bar. He gave me an opportunity, and I never called out. I was always on time. And within a year, he said, I'm opening this company. Would you like to come and work with me? And I said, sure, because it was right near my house. And the people initially in that company, it was someone that's known as Armand Van Helden. So Armand, nobody knew Armand then. Armand was just no different than me. We were just guys that were into music, and we started doing remixes. Well, I wasn't doing remixes. I had no idea about production at the time. I was working at the company selling records, selling these, just making calls. Right now, it's all digital based. You just go online, and I want this. You download it.
Right. Yeah.
Back
A
then,
lot
it was you
easier.
had to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, I'm such and such calling from Megamix. Are you interested in this, that, the other?" So it was a very
Wow.
different time. But that really got my head into. It was Lenny Bertoldo, who's still around, and also Armand. Armand is having a resurgence again. I just saw him on some festival announcement today. But that's that really got my interest in production. But with the DJing thing, it just I just got 100% into it, and that's what I was doing. That's all I did. I started to DJ and really get better at it, and I would spend my summers in Spain. And I would come back with all kinds of imports and
I bet,
European
yeah.
music
That's
that was
awesome.
not
Yeah.
released in the U.S.
Mhm.
And Boston, because of the universities, it has a lot of kids from all over the world, from South
Right.
America, from the Far East, from Spain, France, everywhere. So I was bringing back music that that those kids were just listening to in the islands. If they were in Ibiza for the summer or Saint Tropez or Mykonos, they were listening to that stuff.
Mhm.
Now they come back to school in Boston, and here's some guy playing the music they
Yeah.
just heard. So
Mhm.
that really made my career took off, and I was very fortunate. I had some really good residencies. I was at the Roxy, and then I went to Avalon, which is now the House of Blues. But those were like
Okay.
massive clubs that I just had a lot of. I had a great time. Obviously, for me, DJing was just. It was such a high for me. To be able to play music that I loved, and more importantly, also be given the opportunity to play music that you like,
Mhm.
because over the years it's been more like people want to, they want to hear what they want to hear,
Mhm.
and for me, I was never questioned. I was just like, whatever I was doing seemed to work, so they just gave me free reign. So there was some great times for sure.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I kind of had a like similar, story with just always having a love for music, and I actually played drums like since I was maybe 10 years old. So I was always like really interested in it. I went to a high school, GAMP. I don't know if you heard of it in South
Mhm.
Philly,
Yeah,
but yeah, they taught me music theory, which I still
it's
like.
on South 22nd Street.
Yeah, yeah, right in there.
You love it
South
there.
22nd and Porter, to be exact.
Yep.
Like, who is
That's
this guy?
exactly. He knows everything. Um, But yeah, I was like the similar way. I always knew I wanted to do something with music, and I never thought like DJing would be it. But when I went to college, I got the opportunity to start doing like fraternity and sorority parties, and I was like the same exact way. I had no idea what beat matching was or anything. And Weiss actually gave me my first bar gig, who I know works with you at
Yeah,
HQ
he's a great
a
guy.
lot.
We love
Yeah,
Jason.
Mhm.
and I remember he texted me like the day after, and he was like, "Listen, like they loved your music. You have a great song selection, but you have to learn how to like fucking mix."
Yeah.
So I went and watched him at Tradesman's, and he was just like teaching me some things the week after, and yeah, that's kind of how like when it really clicked, like actually watching someone else do it. So when people ask me, they're like, how did you transition from college to like actually doing bars and clubs?" I'm like, you have to like go out and like meet other DJs and
Yeah.
like learn from them.
hmm
But yeah, I'm sure just DJing in like, big cities like Boston, Philly, AC, you have worked with a ton of different DJs and artists and, things along that. Have you ever had like a mentor like that like really taught you, or was it kind of just you just like learned as you went?
So, I was fortunate to be around good people, and I think no matter what you do in life, that's obviously very important, right? Um, when I started gaining popularity, back then there was we had record pools.
Mhm.
So I believe there's still record pools, but they're all digital now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, record pools were basically just like, let's say, a company such as this, but basically, they petition record labels to like, hey, send me advanced promos, right? So, and it all depended on, well, who's on your roster, like which DJs do you have in your pool, right? Because obviously, a record label in those days, they wanted to get music in front of the right people.
Mhm.
DJs, it wasn't radio stations breaking music; it was DJs that were breaking records. You know, when a radio station would play a record, it was because it had already been tested, street level
Right. Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
clubs.
Right.
So real, in my opinion, because I got to meet, one man specific that he was the program director at Kiss 108 in Boston, which is the equivalent of I guess Q102 in Philly,
Yeah.
a similar
Yeah.
station. Sonny Joe White was his name, and every weekend he was in clubs because he wanted to see what was moving the crowds. And I used to, it's incredible because I used to listen to him on the radio, and then I got to meet him. He started coming to the club that I was DJing at, and he liked the music I was playing, so he introduced himself, and we would talk music and stuff like that. But if he liked something, he would literally run out, find a record, and it would be programmed on the radio station, which is amazing. And it should be more organic rather than data driven.
Right.
But the guy that owned the record pool, Gary Canavo, he said, you should become a Billboard reporter. I'm like, what is that? Right? And they said, well, obviously you're familiar with Billboard magazine. I said, sure. I said, all right, well, how that chart is compiled on the dance side. So the dance, the Billboard top 50, right, for dance, it's compiled by a group of about 100 DJs that Billboard selects.
Okay.
And then every week you submit a chart off of what you're playing, and that's how the top 50. So those lists are compiled every week by the 100 and so DJs, and then that list becomes the top 50.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, okay, sounds great. So he said, make a mix and get it to me, and I'll send it to Billboard. So I'm like, okay. I make a mix, 2 turntables, recorded on a reel-to-reel. Okay, so it was high quality. A reel-to-reel, I put it on a cassette tape. And again, one of those great, you talk about a mentor, and you talk about, a great story, right? A great lesson. And I was happy with it. I made it. I had the right, music selection, in my opinion. I give it to Gary, and just like this, he had a cassette tape, and I'm sitting here, he's sitting there. He puts a cassette tape and, play, fast forward, play, fast forward. He was listening to the programming and the mixing. He stopped it, takes it out, and he goes, "You're better than this." And he throws it in the garbage.
Wow.
I'm like, wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right. So I went back, and I did, I don't know how long it took, whatever, because I practiced. Now, you think you did all right, and this guy just says, this is shit.
Yeah.
Right? Now
you're nervous. Now you're like, I don't know.
But, it was a great lesson, because I think that, I go back to what I said earlier, that if you surround yourself with people that push you, that see maybe things in you that you don't see in yourself, those are the people that you want to surround yourself with, because they're they want you to be better. So so I went back, I did this thing, I bring it back. And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, now I just stood back. I didn't want him to throw it at me. But he said, okay, this is good. We're going to send it. So he sent it to Billboard, and I got a call. His name was Ricardo Compagnoni. He was the head of, Billboard, that side. And in 1996, I became a Billboard reporter. And, so every week, basically, I would get records in advance. So now picture, a song that gets released that we all play, I would get it like 2-3 months in advance.
Yeah, right.
And then what we would do, well, not I mean, like, the whole panel, right? Then you listen to it and you give feedback, because a lot of times the song was not out yet. They were like testing it out, and the feedback that we would provide, would actually have an impact on maybe the production, a remix. Yeah. So there were incredible times back then. And I was a Billboard reporter from 1996 up until COVID. I was lucky and very fortunate. That was one of the longest, tenured Billboard reporters. And once COVID hit, we were down for, because, the clubs weren't open. Yeah. So you can't do a chart unless you're playing music.
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah, makes sense.
But it was great, and that's one thing that that always stuck with me. And then one more quick story: a gentleman that was very influential with me, Dana. His name is he passed away, but his name is Dana Jacovitis, legendary DJ in Boston, and legendary in the music industry, because I didn't know at the time, but he was like very influential in the 70s, like I'm sure the song Frank knows, "Born to Be Alive" by Patrick Hernandez.
Mhm.
They would not be Patrick Hernandez without Day Night. Day Night made that record
Oh wow.
and
Okay.
got it to.
Huh.
He felt so strong about it that he brought it to the record label and said, "You have to listen to this." But one of the things that he taught me, he was so incredible at programming music and mixing, right? That when I don't know about now because not a lot of people use turntables, but back then when we used turntables, there's a pitch control to either, make it go faster or make it go slower.
Yeah.
So a lot of DJs, including myself, sometimes if you needed to speed up the record, you would kind of put your finger on top of the record on the inner part and just kind of give it a little push or like ride it so it went a little bit faster. Or you would run your finger on the side of the platter to slow it down.
Right.
So he saw me do that and he went, "Don't do that." And I said, "Why?" He said, "There's a pitch control on the side of your turntable. If you're pushing it, it's because you need to, make it go faster on the pitch control.
Yeah.
If you're slowing it down, it means that it's too fast and you need to slow it down." So, and I said, "Oh, wow, okay." So I went to work. To this day, when I play a record, you never see me touch the platter. Because that's what the pitch is for. Even on a CDJ. I put a song, you chase the beat, you get it to where you want to be, you cue it again, you hit play, and you just go. You never see me do this.
Right.
So that was a great thing that I took away with me. And I can't imagine those guys in the 70s, they didn't have pitch control. They were all belt-driven turntables. So you had to be really talented back then.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it definitely was a lot harder to become a DJ back then, I feel like, than now. It's a lot easier to buy a board and you have your laptop in front of you with a million songs and you kind of can just go.
Listen, it's not only now DJs are like the new rock stars, right?
Yeah.
They're center stage, right? They're playing in front of tens of thousands of people. Back then, DJs were DJing from a coat check room. It was like the DJ was not respected. The DJ was just somewhere in a corner. Now it's incredible to see how far the culture has come. To go from DJs that used to have lug around milk crates full of records before record boxes. Now you bring a laptop and you have 100,000 songs in your hard drive.
Yeah.
Back then, you basically carried either two milk crates, and you either had the song or you didn't.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
There was no searching.
Right.
Let me search for a song. You search for vinyl, and then CD came around, obviously, which was great. And then I was the laptop thing. Obviously, was great in the sense that you had everything at your fingertips, right? But it was just never. For me personally, it was just never my thing. I'm still a guy that likes to DJ and touch and feel. But you have to embrace technology because if you don't, then you're lost.
Right.
And somebody else comes in and you're done. So, but it's been incredible to see the change over the years.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned like DJs, they're rock stars now. I feel like back then it wasn't so like needed that DJs have to also tap into producing. I think now I feel like every DJ, big time DJ you see that's getting headliner gigs, it's because they produced a song and their song blew up. And I know you got into producing a little bit, or maybe a lot of it. So I will learn now.
I dabbled.
But what type of music did you start producing, and what age did you start producing at?
So it's similar to DJing, right? It's you want to. I had a passion for it, but the toughest thing in anything you do in life is getting started, right? Because what happens when you don't know about something, you're intimidated, and you kind of almost you want to do it, but then you start overthinking it, and then you're like, oh man, I'm never going to learn that. It's going to be too much. So your worst enemy is your mind, right? It's your thoughts, because you can either use them to motivate you or use them to hold you back from doing something great.
Yeah.
So I knew that music lived inside of me. I knew it, and I knew because ever since I was little, I loved melodies. I loved sound. And it doesn't, I'm not a guy, I only do this or I only like this. Music is universal, and it's just, how do I say it? Infinite, right? I could give you the same 20 records right, that I have, and I bet you that we will play them differently.
Yeah,
You could give me the same sound libraries and the same equipment, and I would do something different with the same tools, like being a chef. Give me the same ingredients, I'm going to do something that's different from yours, although we have the same the same product. So for me, the DJing thing just kind of I had that yearning for producing because I was playing music that spoke to me. And it also spoke to thousands of people because I would play in front of them every weekend and I would just see the impact. I'm like, man, that's so powerful. So I said, I have to learn. I have to. But again, where do you start? And then you go out and you buy stuff and it's all, I'm a visual learner. I'm not a guy that cracks open a book and that's not me, right? That's not how I do things or how I learn. To me, it's let me see you do it and then I'll do it. So it was funny because I forget what year. It might have been 1999 or 2000. I got booked to play with Paul Oakenfold at Hammerstein Ballroom in New York City. Massive space. And so I go down there. It's Thanksgiving Eve, I think. And I'm playing, and Paul was delayed. So the promoter said, hey, man, keep playing. I'm like, well, I'm kind of running out of opening stuff.
Right, yeah.
I'm either gonna hammer this room or I'm gonna start playing doubles. So he said, do what you gotta do. I'm like, okay. And I'm playing, and then I feel somebody like tugging at my leg. And I look down because I was on like some sort of stage, and there's this lady, and said, can I come up? Sure. So she comes up and she said, my name is Jan Johnston. I said, oh my God, I'm saying Jan Johnston. So Jan Johnston was in that era. She was from the UK. Well, she's from the UK. She lives in Spain now, but great singer, songwriter. And she was doing, she was like the voice for like the Paul Oakenfolds, the BTs at the time, the Paul Van Dykes, which were like the gods of dance music at that time. So I'm like, I didn't believe her at first, right? And I said, not sold. So I said, I know your music, but I mean, I said, no, it's me, really. It's me. I said, all right, sing me a song. And I'm like, oh my God, it's Jan Johnston. Yeah. So she hung out in the booth. She really loved my set. Then Paul eventually shows up. So she goes, can you come backstage? I go backstage. And she's like, wow, this really is Jan Johnston. And I also got to meet Jana back there, which is another story or a song I did for her. But anyway, she asked me, do you produce? And I said, well, I don't, but I'm in the, I found somebody that is an actual sound engineer, and I'm in the middle of doing stuff with him. Anyway, finished the gig. We traded numbers. She calls me a week later. She comes to Boston. She stayed in my house for 3 months, and we just went in. Because the thing with me, when I walked into a studio, it's overwhelming because back then it was just racks of equipment, keyboards, knobs. It was like, it's like you're getting ready to launch a rocket. And I'm like, where do I start? But my ear and in my head, I knew what I wanted to hear. So I met this guy, Gene Simmons, great, still friends to this day. And I'm sorry, not Gene Simmons, Gene Williams, sorry.
Yeah, I was like, Gene Simmons.
But I also met Gene Simmons.
That's so cool.
But that's a story for later.
Okay.
What I could do is I could describe sounds, or I could start, on a keyboard. I could go through like the library, and I would this is the sound. And then I would hum what I wanted to hear. And then we would make it, right? And that's how. And then I was like, I'm in, because I was just, it was very, very addictive, because you're creating something from nothing,
right?
And it's so cool. For me, it was just incredibly cool. So we ended up doing a record with her, a whole entire record that was supposed to come out on Perfecto, which was Paul Oakenfold's record label. And unfortunately, at that time was when Napster. Are you familiar with Napster?
Yeah.
Napster came. So imagine, Napster is some kid that went to Northeastern University in Boston, created something where you could, anybody could upload music, or if it was in your hard drive, people could pull it from there. So now you no longer had to buy music. Music was free. At the time, I had a record store. and it was always packed because people used to come in. All the DJs, they knew me. We want the music that you play. And then I had the kids that would come to the club. They're like, we want the music that you play. So
Right.
the DJs, here's the records, and to the the club kids, it's like, well, here's a great compilation. And then you go from that to like, we can get this for free. And that devastated the music industry at the time because record labels have been doing it like that forever.
Yeah.
So what do you do now, right? I mean, imagine going to the store. Okay, I want this, and this is product that I got to pay for, and then somebody figures out a way you can get the same product for free. How do you adjust? So it was a very weird time for the music industry, and unfortunately, that whole record that we had done with 11 songs never came out.
Oh wow.
That's so defeating.
Yeah, well, I've learned that every day we're tested in life, and there's a reason for everything. The key is for you to have enough patience and wisdom, or to say I don't know everything, but I in my life I've realized that things in your life happen when they're supposed to happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, was it disappointing? Yeah, because we had spent a lot of time working, and I mean, it's when you work with a pro like her, she was very picky on how she wanted her vocals to sound. And then it's not just recording the vocals and stacks and stacks and stacks of vocals, but then building a music bed around it where those vocals can sit nicely. And every vocalist I've ever worked with, they're a little nutty because to them all they hear is their voice. They don't care about anything else.
Yeah.
But that just got me really into production. Then I started buying gear, and I set up a little studio in my house, and I just never looked back. And then I think I stopped around 2007. I think it was the last thing I did was a remix for Peter Rauhofer. God bless his soul. He passed away. He was an incredible DJ and incredible producer from Austria, but he lived in New York, and he was very, very picky. And I did a remix. We got an opportunity with Davey Gold, also who's no longer here with us. Davey used to work for Strictly Rhythm and then Groovalicious, and which was two very well-known record labels for DJs. And he sent us the vocals. We did it, and it was like Peter was very, very tough on how a record needed to sound. And we said, well, look, let's take a shot. We did it, and he loved it. And like, oh my God, we were so happy. And at the time I had my daughter in 2003. I think this was 2007. And anytime I would go into the studio in the house, Olivia would hear music, and she would come down the steps, and I'll be sitting here, and she would just kind of crawl up on my leg, and she wanted to. So I stopped because as much as I loved music and as much as I loved the production end of it, being with my daughter was more important. So I just stopped. That was the last time I did music, really. I did some things here and there, some edits, and then COVID happened.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there, I'm like, and I upgraded all my stuff, and it was like starting over again because the technology changed so much.
Probably, right?
And yeah, I mean, it was so exciting because to be able to produce again, it's just, for me, it's very just personally rewarding.
Yeah.
Because you're creating something where, I mean, you have all the tools, but what are you doing? And it just, I started doing stuff again. And you know what? I became, over the years, I became friends with Paul Oakenfold. And I said, for shits and giggles, let me just send him this. And I sent it to him, and he said, wow, I really like this one. And I was shocked because I just said, hey, I'm kind of fooling around again. Maybe one of these will fit into one of your sets.
Yeah.
Not thinking that, hey, I like this. What are you doing with it? I want to sign it to Perfecto. So imagine Paul Oakenfold was, in my opinion, he was the pioneer of dance music. There would not be a Tiesto. There would not be an Armin van Buuren, a Paul Van Dyke without Paul Oakenfold. Paul Oakenfold in 1991 was touring with U2. Okay. The opening act for U2.
Wow.
A DJ with two turntables.
Yeah, yeah.
And one of the first CDs he did, it was in Wembley Stadium, 120,000 people. And there's
That's
Paul
insane.
Oakenfold with 2 turntables
Yeah.
and just
That's
a
insane.
massive crowd
crazy.
and opening for you too. So he was someone that I always looked up to. I loved his productions, and I got to meet him. I booked him in Boston. He came, and I was just like starstruck.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I learned from him it was the first time ever back when I was DJing at Avalon. Picture 2,000 people in a room just dancing, right? No phones. Nobody had phones. So people dancing. When Paul Oakenfold came, it was the first time that the entire club was facing the DJ. Like if you were like a
concert.
band.
Yeah.
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 Everybody there was look, I'm getting goosebumps. Like I never forgot it. Here's Paul Oakenfold DJing, and everybody's looking at this guy.
Yeah.
And I remember that 2 things that he would like randomly, he would point at somebody in the crowd, like just random, and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
People go nuts. Like, he just pointed at me. And then I remember at the end of a show, people would bring either like a T-shirt, like a Perfecto T-shirt they bought, or like a record of his or a CD. And no matter what, he signed everybody's stuff.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
When like he said, we're done? Okay. Then he would go back to his hotel. So I was a fan of his because of the music that he was doing that I found was very profound. But then seeing him in action as a professional, he wasn't the best mixer, but he just knew. You said something earlier about when you were doing your college stuff and then you went into a club. We can talk about it later if you want. So he wasn't the smoothest mixer, but man, he knew when to drop a song that would just make the place go nuts, which in my opinion is more important. Knowing when to play the right song at the right time is more important than being smooth, mixing.
Definitely. Yeah. Most of the time, the people that are just there drinking and dancing, they just want to hear music that they like and want to, that enjoy listening to. They want to dance, and if you're not playing songs that they like, you could be the best mixer in the world. It doesn't matter.
1,000,000%.
Yeah.
Being a DJ, in my opinion, it's people are paying to go in and have a good time. And I always used to say, the day people are lined up outside a venue with $50 in their hands to listen to me, then I can educate. But up until that point, I'm just a servant. I'm a person that got hired to provide people, to set the tone in the room to have a good time. And you're not always going to make everybody happy, right? Because people have different tastes.
Yeah.
But if you have more wins than losses, then you're doing a good job. There were times as a DJ where I felt that technically I had a great night, personally, right?
Yeah.
But it didn't translate to the dance floor. And other times that I felt, oh man, I had an off night technically. People said, and like, dude, this was great. You sounded awesome. So as a DJ, me personally, I've always struggled with, it was never about me. It was never about me being happy. I'm happy playing music. It's always about, am I doing the right thing by the people that came here? You got to remove your ego.
Right.
You got to remove your ego from that. And I've seen a lot of people get caught up in that because all of a sudden you are center stage. You're right there and everybody's looking at you.
Yeah.
You can never believe your own bullshit. Right? The minute you start believing your own bullshit, you need better friends that are going to say, knock it off.
Right.
So, but that's true, right? If people really care about you, they're going to give you a pat in the back when you say, man, that was great. They're also going to, pull you by your ear and say, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Right. So, I've been very fortunate that I've had great opportunities and I was able to make the most of them, but I've always surrounded myself with good people that cheered for me, but also told me, when I needed to get it together.
It's really interesting. We've talked about it before, how you started out as a DJ producer, but it's interesting that you are involved or were involved in kind of all aspects of nightlife, because I feel like that's pretty rare. It's usually somebody's just a DJ or somebody's just on the business side of it, but you're able to kind of give us perspective from both sides. But how did you kind of get into the management side of this business? When did you transition from being a DJ to being a manager or on the business side?
So, over the years, because I genuinely love what I do. I'm very fortunate that I get to do what I love for a living and get paid for it. That I try to always keep myself grounded because, as an immigrant, I didn't always do things that I love. I had I just worked and, to make money.
Right.
But, you continue to kind of follow your passion and stay true to what you do. And then you get opportunities. And anytime you get an opportunity, you try to maximize it. So when I was in Boston, besides, DJing, obviously I had a record store. I had a recording studio. And then I ended up for a short time before I moved here, I opened up a DJ school because I wanted to teach anybody that had an interest.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, wrote out a whole curriculum. It was called DJ Mix Academy, and it was great. But I always wanted to learn more. And as I got older, and then I had my first daughter. You realize, okay, well, how long? Not that I look. I mean, I could DJ today. I mean, this Saturday when I knew that Morton was arriving late, I just told the opener. I said, listen, you go on later. I just played because I love playing. But so it's not that I wanted to stop DJing. It's just that you have to think, okay, your life, it has different phases, I guess, right? And I just saw myself, okay, well, I had an incredible run as a DJ. That was my profession. I did that professionally for 15 years. It's how I made my living, right? And then, but while I was DJing, I mean, I also had other things. I had the record store, the recording studio, the DJ school. I was booking talent. I was learning marketing, how to market these shows, how to roll them out, how to go on an on sale, how to scale tickets, all that stuff. And then in 2004, 2003, Olivia was born. That was my first daughter. Their mom was from South Philly.
Oh, okay.
So it was important to us, although in Boston, we loved the city and we had great friends. All my family had moved back to Spain, so I was there by myself.
Okay.
So we felt strongly that we wanted to raise our children around other siblings. Moved down here, and it was my first opportunity to all right, well, what do you do now? Do you go to work for someone else? So I opened up with a partner, opened up a lounge in an old city called 114.
Okay, cool.
It was right next to Suede, I think it was, between Second and Front. So
okay,
Market Street between Second and Front. And because I had developed such great relationships with a lot of DJs that I was booking in Boston, I told them, hey, I got a little spot in Philly. It's not Avalon. It's not 2,000 people, but it's a 200-person capacity lounge, very intimate. And they were like, we're in. So I started bringing in these guys that really didn't belong in that room because they were big room DJs, but because of how I, the relationship that we had, forged, it was like, you're in, we're in. So that was my first attempt at actually doing everything from soup to nuts. And what I did do, I hired a GM that I knew. And then I worked under him because I wanted to learn. I was doing what I did as as an owner, but and I could program and I could market, but I wanted to learn the back end. How does the stuff work behind the scenes? With how do you order product? How do you control cost? How do you do these things that are very, very important? Because ultimately that's the money. Right. The front part is the marketing, but ultimately you do the marketing so it can be successful. So I learned that, and for about 4 years, and then in 2008 I got an opportunity to go to Atlantic City, and I got my first gig at a casino. We ended up selling the business, and I got an opportunity to work at Showboat. And in Atlantic City, and I was the operations manager for the casino. And one of the things that I was involved in was Foundation Room, and which was part of the House of Blues. So they had the big concert venue, they had Foundation Room, and they had Worship, which was a nightclub that struggled I think, because of the layout and whatnot. That's where actually I met Frank.
Oh, really?
So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, how I met Frank, it was literally, I think it was a few days before Christmas, 2008, I think. And the boss goes, we have a problem. Whoever was supposed to do New Year's Eve
Hmm.
at, whatchamacallit, at worship, backed out. And we were having lunch, and he was stressing out, and I said, I can put it together. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, I can put it together. Literally
Yeah.
within an hour, I put this whole thing together, and we ended up doing, I think, like 600 people, and they were like, "Can you do this more often?"
Yeah,
And I'm like,
right?
yeah, because I mean, ultimately, that's what I do, right? That's where I'm comfortable. That's the business that I know.
Hmm.
The operational side was great in the sense that it was teaching me how to really run a large department with, a couple of hundred employees, right? That are all, part of what makes a casino work.
Yeah.
But so it was great that I was learning that. But this other stuff on the side, I could do that with my eyes closed. And so okay, well, you got to do more. Anyway, within 4 months, they sent me from Showboat to the pool at Harris because it was a sister property at the time. It was Caesars, Bally's, Showboat, and Harris. They
Mhm.
were all owned by Caesars Entertainment. So I went there, and April, I think it was April 2009,
Okay.
and yeah, just took over the pool. Frank was there. I think he was just supplying DJs at the time. And then I liked Frank right away. We spoke the same language, and I got him more involved. And the rest is history, as they say on that. But I mean, for me, on the operational side, it was learning all the other aspects. It was, learning the business side of it. And then when you combine all of that, right? Because the thing is, a lot of people that do standalone nightclubs,
Mhm.
it's very difficult for them to work in a corporate setting because they're used to doing things a certain way and they don't check with anybody else. In a casino, there's compliance.
Right. Yeah.
There are all these things that you have to do, and there's a way of
Approval.
doing them. So that was incredibly advantageous to me because I knew how to speak to a street level promoter and I knew how to speak to a CEO and everyone in between. You have to know your audience. You have to know who you're talking to. Typically, people in the casino industry, when you're sitting in a setting like this talking about business, it's all about bottom line, return on investment. If I give you this, how much money are you making me back? Right? What kind of impact is this going to have on the property? So, so you have to speak their language. If I'm speaking to a DJ, I know exactly the lingo. I know exactly what.
Yeah.
Just like if I'm speaking to a street level promoter, right, that's hustling to to try to make an event happen, and then you're speaking to a chief marketing officer, both trying to do the same thing, very different
Two
conversation.
languages, yeah.
So these are the things that over the years, it's knowing your audience, knowing how what triggers somebody, and making it so you speak their language on both sides, so they feel comfortable in doing business with you or completing a task that you need to complete.
Right.
So, it's been. I will say that my position itself, it's pretty unique because there's not a lot of people that kind of have been successful. And I don't want to use the word success because I consider myself successful. That's not what I'm saying. I think that trying to balance both and bringing them together, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Because knowing how to talk to the people on the left and how to talk to people on the right and making everybody come together, that they don't teach at school.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, they don't.
Yeah.
They don't.
Told us about your past, how you started in nightlife, and kind of like where it led you to be now. For somebody that's never been to HQ in AC, how would you explain it to somebody, and how does it differentiate from other clubs that people may have been to?
So obviously, I'm partial because I work there, but I've always had the good fortune. Also had the good fortune to work at the pool at Harris for years. You know, Premier, although I've never worked there, it's an amazing venue. They spent $14 million when they built it, when they did renovation from Mix. So I think every room has its own thing, right? I think what's special about HQ, the nightclub, is that it's not your typical club. You know, first of all, it's, you know, it's got its own tower at Ocean, and it's not ground level.
Mhm.
It's, you know, it's up. I mean, it's elevated. It's on the third and fourth floor, but I mean, there's probably like another 5 or 6 floors from the ground. So, and it's not your typical rectangle or square. It's like a kidney shaped sort of venue, but it's glass. So the nightclub is all glass,
Yeah, yeah.
and you know you're looking at the ocean. So you're looking at the Atlantic Ocean, which is, you know, similar to the pool. When you walk into the pool, it's like, oh my God, it's like the Disney effect. It's a glass dome. It's a
Yeah,
90-foot glass
yeah.
dome with palm trees and a massive pool, and it's
Mhm.
always 82 degrees.
Yeah.
That's very unique,
Yeah.
right? That's
is.
not your typical nightclub. And, you know, that's one thing that I think Harris and the pool have capitalized on over the years, that it's not your typical dark nightclub.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Right?
different.
So I think one of the things, one of the many ingredients that makes HQ special, ultimately the people make it special. And when I mean the people, I mean two things, because there's the team that operates it, right? The team that I'm very fortunate to work with, because you know they execute from the time you pull up to, you know, to the door,
Mhm.
to your experience being, you know, coming up the elevator, to when you're seated, to when you're greeted, to when you get a drink. So it's you know the whole experience, from the service aspect, but then the production too. And I think HQ is big enough that you can have a great party, but it's small enough that's intimate. You know, if
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
you know, I remember when I was at the pool. At the pool, if you have 900 people, it looks like, ooh,
Yeah.
it looks a little light tonight because it's such a massive space.
Yeah.
And it's easy for people to get lost because it's,
Mhm.
you know, you have palm trees and you have, you know, you have different areas where people can go get drinks. So it's just, you know, it's wonderful when you have 2,000, 2,500 people. But when you have 600, 700 people, which would pack most any club
Yeah.
in Atlantic
Some
City,
clubs die for that. Yeah.
right? So
It looks
you know, I'm
sad.
always I'm very real when people make comments about, excuse me, different clubs. I take everything with a grain of salt. You know, one, because I know the rooms and I know the market, and I know this is a brutal business. It's hyper competitive.
Mhm.
You know, but I think, you know, when I look at HQ, I think that the club itself is unique. It's, you know, I mean, what club is made out of glass, you know, that has glass windows looking at an ocean?
Mm.
Probably not that many of them.
Yeah.
It's elevated, it's not ground level. You know, we do, I think that the experience itself, from the DJs to the production, like the big LED screen
Mhm.
to all the special effects and how everything is coordinated, I think that does separates us from a lot of the competition in Atlantic City. Not that they don't have those bells and whistles, but I think it's the team itself. We have a team that was handpicked, that understands the culture, that understands the task, and everybody takes pride in it. And if you do that in any business, you get everybody to believe in what you're doing, you're unstoppable.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. I haven't been in a nightclub, but it does look like
You haven't
very,
been to
very
HQ?
fun. Now, yeah, not the nightclub. I've been to the day club when
You have that duct
Steve
tape?
Aoki was there.
Well, tie him up.
Should we take him? Should we show him a night?
You guys should. Yes, definitely. Next time I have a night off, 100%. But I've been to the day club, and that's just a whole different experience in itself.
Yeah.
When Steve Aoki was there, that was
That's a monster, man.
absolutely insane. Yeah.
When that nightclub and the beach club, it hits a certain point that it just roars. It takes on its own life.
Yeah.
You know, and all you can do is just kind of step back and just kind of watch it. And I've done that many times, where you just like, a lot of how I get my personal satisfaction from being in the business. It's things like that. It's things that you work. You know, a lot of times I'm walking down the, you know, in the back, down the hallway or whatever, in the back of the house, and I'll get somebody to say, "Man, I wish I had your job." and it's because they don't see what goes on behind the scenes. All they see is just a packed club, music, liquor, girls, a good time,
Good
right?
vibe, yeah.
But they don't understand that that's actually the easy part.
Right.
That's just operational. That's just people doing their job, right? That's execution. The real work happens behind the scenes, so that happens. And sometimes you can make all of this stuff happen back here to put it here, but if you don't have the right team out here, it doesn't happen. Or it happens, but it's not as successful.
Right.
So, there's a lot of, to me, I work every day. My phone is always on. Doesn't matter whether I'm on vacation. I mean, I've gone overseas where you won't get an out of office from me because this is what I do. Obviously there's times where like, okay, I'm not picking up the phone. But if you have that mindset, I think that's how you become successful. And I've also learned that for me personally, growth only happens when you push yourself outside of your comfort zone. Because you get complacent. You show up, you do the same thing every day, and it's like, okay, then you're not challenging yourself.
Yeah, right.
But when somebody gives you a shove and pushes you out of your lane, to do something different, again, I go back to what I used to say, surround yourself with people that challenge you. Surround yourself with friends that will call you out on BS and also give you a pat in the back. Those are the people you need around you no matter what you do, no matter what business, because it's going to keep you sharp. For me, I don't feel any different than when I was 18 mentally.
Yeah.
I'm just like, this is what I love. This is what I do. This is what I was born for. And I think that if you have that mentality, then you overcome challenges. If you think that something's going to be a problem, it'll become a problem.
Yeah.
Trust me. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, you definitely, obviously, you started in Boston and you went to Philly, AC. I'm sure you have a million stories to tell. But I've been asking everybody that we've had on, what is the most like unusual, weirdest gig or just like nightlife experience that you've encountered, if you can name one?
Oh boy. I can't say that. Look, there's always different things that happen. I mean, I one of the reasons why I never really liked, I was always wary of using a laptop to DJ because it's electronic, right? I mean, like a turntable, the Technique 1200s, you could buy it brand new, turn it on, beat it up for 30 years, and it's going to continue to work.
Still gonna go, yeah.
Things have become more technologically advanced, so we rely on technology. I went to do a gig in Philly. And I brought my laptop, set it up, tested everything, and I was the headliner. And everything worked. When I went back to when it was my turn, my computer died. My computer was just, the screen was black. So that was
it's a nightmare.
Yeah, it just...
What'd you do?
Well, you drop 10 and punt. Obviously the guy that was opening for me, obviously he had his computer, and he was gracious enough to let me use his computer, but it was just that was a tough one. Over the years, you always have different things. I mean, I think it was 2019. We had at the Beachclub, we had Oscar G playing, and party was rocking. All of a sudden, like, you just see this black cloud, right, that came up. It looked like the Death Star, right? It just kind of came up from where, like, down the shore. And once it caught up to, like, we were at the beach, it just, like, stopped. And it just let loose.
Oh, my God.
It just let loose. And it was almost like a mini hurricane. Because, so people, obviously, we got to tell to people, get out of the water, because if it starts
lightning,
yeah. And people are having a great time. They're drinking, partying. But when the wind kicked in and you have furniture being basically toppled over, Mike. So imagine everybody, you're running an operation. People have their alcohol at the tables. They have food, open checks, right? And people are scattering, right? So now everybody ran into the casino and just instantly lined up in front of the nightclub, right? Because they were thinking, okay, we're going inside. So we try to salvage as much as we could. Now imagine the nightclub is not as big as the beach club, okay? So you have a ton of people that are outside trying to get into the club. The club is not set up until
Right, yeah,
nighttime.
Yeah.
That was probably one of the most challenging days professionally because you have to hold your composure. You have to, I mean, everybody's looking at me. What do we do? Right? So first is safety. Make sure everybody's safe, staff inside. We announce on the microphone inside, get indoors, right? And then obviously we had to try to take whatever we could salvage. So if you guys that come in, you had a table and you have 4 bottles at your table, we try to bring those bottles in to set you up inside. It was incredibly challenging because there was more people that we could fit inside the nightclub. But in my opinion, look, what we did is we made it right. We just, whoever came in, we set them up. If their bottles had fallen because of the wind or whatever, we gave them new bottles. And we salvaged something that could have been really bad. Because if we hadn't opened the nightclub, but again, I go back to saying that you have to have the right team because the team sprung into action and it was like, we got to do it. Just get it done. And we'll figure it out later. And I've had a few dicey things. DJing, not so much. I mean, DJing, sometimes, you're disappointed in yourself, maybe from a artistic standpoint that you could have done better as a DJ, or a certain event that you went to, maybe it was not as well attended as you had thought. But if you love what you do, you make the most of it. So I don't have any horror stories as a DJ besides my laptop dying.
That's a horror.
that is. So now it's I have a backup to a backup to a backup.
Right.
I mean, I have USB. I don't use laptops anymore. I have multiple USBs. I have all my music on the cloud. So even if I lose that, I can go to the cloud and download stuff.
Yeah. So we actually, let's transition a little bit. We started doing Instagram polls to kind of get interactive with the listeners for the podcast. And I want to get your opinion on them too. First thing we did was vodka versus tequila. Vodka won 53% of the votes. Where do you stand on that?
So it's funny because obviously as an operator, when it comes to nightclubs, and I mean, so my personal opinion, when I was much younger, I drank a lot of Cuervo one day. Bad idea. Bad idea.
I bet,
But back then, I mean, tequila was just basically it, right? That's basically what you had. And it was a horrible experience. So I said, I'm never drinking tequila again. And I didn't drink tequila until Eric Murillo, God rest his soul, came in 2018. He came to play at the Beachclub, and on his rider it was like Clase Azul, and I'm like, what the hell is Clase Azul? Right? Never heard of it.
Yeah.
And his manager Javier was calling me. You have the bottle, right? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, so luckily the casino had the bottle. We got it. They come down, and Eric goes, come on, man, let's do a shot. And I'm like, I don't drink tequila, dude. No, you have to have tequila. So his cousin, Javier, which was also his manager, he basically, because obviously you guys are familiar with the bottle, right?
Yeah.
So people would steal the bottle because it's of just how the bottle
Right.
looks.
Beautiful.
So he would literally take a liter bottle of Fiji, empty it, and pour the contents of the Clase into the Fiji and keep it in his back pocket. So we do a shot, and I'm like, oh my God, what is this? So that kind of like started like, okay, well, maybe I should start going out with tequila again and dump the current girlfriend. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But so I'm more of a tequila guy now than vodka. Not that I dislike vodka, but vodka, I mean, look, any product that's good, you can drink just chilled by itself. You don't need anything. There's great vodka that you just chill it and you just sip it. You know?
Right.
But it's funny enough that in bottle service in the business, vodka reigned. Yeah. Vodka was at the top. Not anymore. Tequila.
Yeah, a lot of my friends like tequila. I'm always a vodka guy. Yeah,
but look,
always.
at the end of the day, it's like it's whatever you enjoy.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
I mean, it's whatever it's whatever you enjoy. Whether it's just having a drink by yourself or when you're out socially, it's whatever makes you feel happy and whatever does it for you. But I have leaned. I'm more of a tequila guy.
Gotcha.
I like some nice reposado, chilled.
That's Frank.
Not that Frank has any at the moment.
Next time you're
Frank's
on,
the
we'll make
same
sure to
way,
have it.
though.
We'll make sure to have it in the fridge.
I know when I'm with Frank, we're drinking classic. So we had another question on the poll of like, does anybody have any questions for us or advice that they want like responses for? And somebody asked, how do you still have a productive day after a long night out or working or drinking?
Discipline.
You have to get up and just do it.
So everybody moves differently. Everybody works differently. I'm the kind of person that I am, I guess, not, I don't want to say self-motivated, but if I have something to do, it's getting done. It's weird. Like, if I have to wake up early, right? I set my alarm. I normally, mentally, I wake up before my alarm goes off because I've trained my mind to this is what we have to do, and it's getting done. So to me, in anything in life, whatever you want to do, you can achieve, but you have to be disciplined and you have to self-govern yourself. You are your own boss. Nobody can manage you. Nobody can do anything if you don't want to, but you have to hold yourself accountable. And if you know, hey, I have an important day tomorrow, then maybe don't drink tonight.
Yeah.
Right? It's just that accountability. Hold yourself accountable. Now, it's great in theory. And, you know, I trust me, I've done both. I've done stuff that was like very disciplined, and I've done stuff where the job still always gets done. But I've done plenty of times where I was on no sleep or very little sleep, and I was dragging ass. But you make a commitment, you see that through. Right. So it's discipline.
Yeah.
I guess I need some of that because if I go out the night before, I'm like, I'm sleeping in, don't call me.
We're young, we're still learning.
I don't know what it's like to sleep 8 hours. I don't.
I think I slept 12 hours last night.
Oh my God. I think I would explode.
That's nice.
Like, what?
Nice night of sleep.
What was the next one, KP?
I need advice. I work in a club in Philly, and I got offered to work down the shore this summer. How do I quit the Philly one without burning bridges in case I want to return in the summer?
So it's a great question because I deal with that a lot, right? HQ, because of its popularity, attracts a lot of people to work there. So my advice would be to think long term, right? If this is something that you're just, hey, I'm just passing by, this is not going to be my career, I'm going to be done in a year or whatever it is, then chances are that you probably want to go for the money. A lot of people do that in the business, no matter what, because you always have, in my opinion, be a good person, always be a good human being, and always put yourself in somebody else's shoes, meaning that, you know, reverse roles. Let's say that person was a bottle server, okay? And she's thinking, okay, well, I got a job offer down the shore. It's popular. I'm going to make more money. Okay. Well, the shore is 3 months. Okay. So you have to think, if I don't think like the server, think like the manager or the owner of the venue, right? That person's depending on you. Now, if you want to leave because you feel that that's a better decision for you personally and financially, then that's what you should do. But you should handle it correctly. At the very least, definitely 2 weeks notice. Have a conversation with that person and say, look, this is how I feel. You know, again, at the end of the day, it's about you. It's not about what anybody else is going to think, because the manager may tell you, go pound sand. I can't believe you're doing this to me. I gave you a job. They're going to give you the guilt trip because they're being selfish. The same token, that manager gave you a job when you needed it. Yeah. Right? So now don't be selfish. So make the decision. If the decision is that you want to do that, then own it, make it, but behave accordingly. Because guess what? It was a saying that I said for many, many, many years. Be nice to everybody on your way up because you're going to meet them all on the way down. Yeah. What happens is that person now could be the GM 2 years down the road at the venue that you want a job in. Yeah. And you're going to run into that same person. And if you handle things correctly with that person, you're always going to have an open door. But if you didn't handle things correctly, they're probably going to say, hey, I remember when you left me high and dry. So don't chase money. Don't go to a job because they're giving you more money. Make the decisions based on where you are professionally, emotionally, and sometimes financially. But don't leave a job that you're happy at to go make more money somewhere else, because I know plenty of those people that left HQ that have regretted it.
Yeah.
It's not just about the money. It's working with a team of people that respect you, that you are happy in the morning when you're getting dressed to go to work. Say, oh my God, thank God I have that to go to.
Right.
So it's not just money.
Yeah, no, I definitely learned like in nightlife, people work their way up, and I always try to make it a point, like wherever I'm DJing at, introduce myself to the bartenders or the managers, and make sure I have a good impression. They remember who I am, and remember that I was respectful, and
It's a common courtesy,
cater to
man.
them.
It's common courtesy. I mean, it's people won't respect you because of your title. Leadership is not a title. Leadership is a choice. So it's if you behave accordingly, and you respect other people, that's very impactful. I anytime anybody pays me a compliment at a meeting or somewhere in the building or outside of the building about HQ, I accept it graciously. But that's a compliment that's paid to my team, because everything that we've been able to accomplish to this day, it's not because I'm a better operator, I'm smarter than anybody else, just because I lead a certain way that impacts and attracts people to come and work together. And the people that don't, I coach them out, because I don't want negative people around me. I want people that are dedicated, hardworking, that want to be successful, that take pride in what they do and want to be the best at it. Right. And then we feed off of each other. Because let me tell you, during the summer when we're going back to back and there's like 2 hours in between, if you know that you have 50 other people doing it with you, it gets a lot easier to do, because we're all dragging, but we're all holding each other up.
In a positive mood.
That's it. And it's like, to me, it's like anybody that's worked with me or that knows me. I mean, this is who I am. I'm always joking around. I'm always, try to have fun. And there's a lot of serious things that also pertain to my job, but it's how you approach it. It's what I said earlier. If you think it's going to be a problem, it'll turn into a problem. But we've been able to kind of forge a really good, solid team that all have the same goal. Yeah, they want to be successful, but wouldn't it be great if you can work someplace that you're valued, respected, you have fun, and you make money? Right. Man, that's the lottery right there. Yeah. That's the lottery.
And speaking of the summer, I know we're quickly entering summer. Do you guys have any exciting announcements or events coming up?
I was thinking of starting to book some talent right after this. See if I can fill the summer.
My schedule's open.
So, we started to work on summer 2023, summer 2022.
Right.
One of the luxuries that well, I shouldn't say luxuries. Ocean is one property. Right, it's a standalone property. It's not MGM. It's not Hard Rock that own multitude of properties and have assets everywhere. We're one property, so I treat the venues that I manage like they're my own business. I can't lose money, right? Because or else I wouldn't be in business. And so I understand that a lot of these big operators, these conglomerates, they have a lot of money. So, for us, it's how do we get there first? How do we do a better job than everybody else? For us, besides profitability, at the top sits hospitality. For me personally, as an operator, because if you don't nail the hospitality, and what I mean by that, if you don't treat your guests right, then forget the money. The money won't be there. So I focus, and I train the staff to focus on service. If you focus on service, and if you focus on servicing that guest that made a choice to come to your venue rather than mine, right? We owe them something. What do we owe them? An experience that's positive. So when they leave, they become your cheerleaders, right? And they tell their friends, and they're calling you to come back next week. If you do that, money is a byproduct of that. But if you focus on money without the service, you'll never be successful. You may get lucky, but you'll never be successful. So for us, it's just about creating, we're very analytical when it comes to bookings, how we book, when we book, and who we book against, what's happening in New York, what's happening in DC, what could be happening in Las Vegas, because the talent that we attract is global. It's not regional.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, we have amazing DJs, that play for us, like a Rick Wonder, like a Shortcuts, DJ Clutch, right? Amazing, skilled guys that are local and are incredible DJs, right? But then when we do the Beach Club and we do Saturday at the Nightclub, we try to attract a bigger global type of act. Those guys can go anywhere.
Yeah.
Those guys, I say it all the time. We're not just bidding against MGM or Harris or Hard Rock. We're bidding against the entire planet because Tiesto can play in Dubai, he can play in Atlantic City, he can play in Vegas, he can play in Ibiza.
Yeah.
So the fact that we're able to get someone like Tiesto twice in 3 months, I try to really drive that home to the staff. It's like, think about the severity and the magnitude of that. You know how many people want to have that guy in their venue?
Yeah.
And the fact that he's saying, okay, I'll go there. So once that happens, then we owe a great experience to everybody, not just from the DJ and his team, but also to everybody that buys a ticket and that supports the event.
That's true. I guess I never really thought of it like that. Like that he could really go anywhere and he's coming to you guys twice in 3 months.
You think about some of the people we have. Tiesto, Aoki, Above and Beyond, James Hype, Diplo.
Yeah.
These guys can play anywhere in the world that they want. Anywhere. So, the fact that they're saying, okay, we'll give you a date. Obviously it's humbling, but now I say it all the time. Okay, we got the talent. Now we really got to put up the numbers, right? It's like when you go to your boss and you say, hey, I want a raise because look at what I've done. And so I'm justifying the raise. And when somebody gives you a raise, typically with that comes more responsibility, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just this, oh, great, I'm getting the same money. I'm getting more money to do the same thing. Anytime you move up a click, it's more responsibility. More money, but more responsibility. So, when you look at it like that, I go back to, mindset. It's all in the way that you analyze and you look at things. So I always try to look at it from somebody else's perspective, and because I think that gives you a better understanding of how you need to make that decision, so.
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on, Manny. I definitely learned a lot. I'm sure KP, you
Yeah,
did too.
I did too.
Yeah, it was really interesting, like I said earlier, just to see and hear from somebody that has been on really every single aspect of nightlife. And
still growing. Someday
yeah.
I want to be a dancer on Frank's team.
Shut up.
Get into that little tutu.
If you could dream it, you could do it. Yeah. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. And our next guest is going to be announced in the next few days. And we'll see you guys next week. Thanks.
Thank you for having me.
No problem.